Hi, I'm Loza. I'm here with Amanda Malachesky. Hi, Amanda. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about where you're at, what you're up to, what's happening in your life. Also, what is your business? I'm super curious
What is
about
my
that.
business? Of course. I'm a functional nutrition coach. And
Cool.
so what that means is that I help people figure out the root causes of their health complaints. And I specialize in helping people with complex and confusing health issues that, they've been trying to get help maybe for some time, maybe even years. And it's just been really challenging for them to figure out what's really going on. They're not getting good answers from their doctors and they're just really confused. Like, why is this happening? What can I do? And so I specialize in helping people put together a really kind of step-by-step action plan to unearth those root causes and help them resolve their health complaints. And that mostly centers around diet and lifestyle changes, particularly.
What kind of lifestyle changes?
We focus in on, how are people sleeping? How are people living? What are they eating? How are they managing their stress? That's a huge one. Are they moving their body? What can we fiddle with? What can we tweak to make some really big shifts with health that aren't such drastic? Sometimes I think a lot of us, or a lot of the people who are dealing with these really complex issues, are kind of searching like a magic pill or a magic protocol. And I find again and again and again that doesn't really get people where they want to go. It's like you kind of have to just dig in, get really curious, ask a lot of really good questions, and just start, looking at what's really going on and what can I change? What do I have control over here and now? So it's all those things: sleep, exercise, diet, stress reduction. Yeah.
So what are these really complex issues? I'm really curious to know more about that.
Yeah. So there's kind of an epidemic right now in America with sort of complex chronic diseases. One of the sort of statistics I frequently cite on my in my written materials is that 1 in 2 Americans has a chronic disease. So things like, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune diseases, and so on. And
1 in 2.
1 in 2.
Wild.
50% of people, yes. And wow. And then 1 in 4 people, so 25% have multiple chronic disease diagnoses. And these people not only have combinations of those things I just mentioned, but, the autoimmune diseases like fibromyalgia or multiple sclerosis or celiac disease or lupus, or there's like a lot of them, and it's like any one of them isn't like a huge player overall, but if you combine all of those autoimmune diseases under just one umbrella, like autoimmune disease, it's a huge thing, and they often co-occur with other medical problems. And these people are the sickest of the sick. These are people that have a lot of trouble getting out of bed. They're constantly managing chronic pain. They feel really crappy all the time. They are, sometimes not able to work, or even often not able to work because their health issues are so present for them. A person like that has all these complicated things going on, and they go in to see the doctor, and there's just not much that a doctor can really do for them in a 15-minute office visit.
Yeah.
They might be able, and they might look at some tests and say, well, these look fine. You're fine, but this person is not fine and they don't feel fine. So, and then the other piece that I'm really passionate about is mental health. And so this interface of depression and anxiety, and how so much of what causes those actually has to do with how we're treating our body and how we're living. And there's a tremendous amount that we can do to shift that terrain, to change that. without reaching for the prescription, which also comes with a whole host of side effects and things that a lot of people don't really want to invite into their life. So it kind of runs the gamut, all those things.
This is a really dedicated field that you've devoted yourself to. What inspires and it has inspired you to be in this place where you are right now?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Thanks for asking. I had my own chronic disease journey, like so many of us in this field. It's pretty rare to find someone who hasn't had that experience. But yeah, so I'm 42 now, and when I was 38, I had some interesting things go on over the years, but when I was 38, I had this everything kind of broke down, and I was in those shoes. I was having just daily panic attacks. I just had this irritating feeling in my body all the time. I had tremendous pain. I wasn't sure what was going on. I was severely fatigued. I had a lot of trouble just doing my daily tasks, which is kind of hard because I have smaller children than I do now. They're now 11 and 6. And so I was, kind of like, what am I going to do here? And so, things were pretty severe. They felt kind of intense. So I went to see my doctor, like a lot of people would. And she really it was the story that I just explained. It's like she looked at my blood labs and she said, well, there's nothing wrong here. Maybe you should try therapy, or I could offer you some birth control pills. And we did discover, I guess that's not true to say that nothing's wrong. She did find, it looked like, this is when I was finally given a diagnosis of endometriosis, which is a hormonal issue. And so, yeah, I just, I was in those shoes. I wasn't sure what to do, but I knew for sure, without a doubt, that birth control pills wasn't going to fix all of these complex things that were going on. And so I just started digging. I started looking, I started seeking, researching, trying to figure out what could help me. And that's how I sort of stumbled into, almost accidentally, the functional nutrition and functional medicine space, and found my calling almost by accident. And so then I dove into trying to fix myself. And, what ended up helping me was a combination of kind of conventional treatments and this other root cause work. I really couldn't be where I am today without both. But, I had to dig deep and look at a million different factors and sort out, what's really going on here? What is creating this pain? What's creating this anxiety? What's missing that's allowing my body to have anxiety? What is contributing to all these digestive symptoms I'm experiencing? So, that in a short nutshell, that's sort of the thing. I went through that whole process, and I was just really frustrated that there weren't better options for people. I was just like, this is kind of criminal that there's not better options for people. And as I was studying and learning, I was like, people need to know that there's another way. There's another option. There's something else here. And so the rest is history, as they say.
Well, so I'm really shocked that you're saying that this was 4 years ago when you were diagnosed. And so, for a chronic illness, that's, somebody could be better in just a couple of years. So and obviously it took you some time to come to what you found and implement it. And so if somebody comes to you with chronic illness, you're able, possibly the healing journey starts right then and there.
That's right. It does. Absolutely. And I think there's a little bit of sometimes dishonesty in this field where people are like, oh, if you adopt this gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free diet, you're going to feel better in a month. And you do. You feel a little better. But yeah, if you have a chronic condition, it does take some time. So I'm going to be one of the first to just be totally honest and straight and say that, it takes some time. And I'm still working on pieces of it. But, be out of those woods of like feeling so horrible every single day, and having so much clarity about which parts do I have control over, which parts can I manage and make good choices with. It just, like, that amount of control gives you so much back to your life, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you're really sick and maybe you don't even know what's going on, it's like everything's running you. The illness is driving your life and you have no idea what's going on. But, to get back in the driver's seat and be able to say, okay, I maybe can't control everything, and I maybe can't even expect a complete remission, but I can absolutely make the right choices to control, 50 to 80% of my symptoms, and, be doing a lot better day to day and have a lot more function than I did before. Like, that's gold.
Yeah. 50 to 80% could be the difference between being in bed and actually being up and awake and alert.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just read a story from a colleague the other day they were working with a client, and this person hadn't been able to drive a car for 2 years because of brain fog and dizziness, and there were other issues going on. But, based on the work that they were doing together, the sort of, it's hard work, but it's rewarding. She was able to drive her car for the first time in several weeks, and it was like, I love those stories. It's so amazing.
Yeah, that's so inspirational that there is an opportunity for change, because just like the narrative that we hear from the doctors who have so many tools that are effective, and sometimes with chronic illness, I feel like the ball is dropped a little bit because there's no hope given. I actually just did another interview with someone who's in a similar field to you and also has a chronic illness history. So that would be really interesting to watch in tandem. And we were talking about how the doctors rarely give hope, and how that's a key ingredient in healing and seeking out a further treatment.
Yeah, there absolutely is hope for people. And, if you're really, 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 really sick, that hope looks really different than it does for somebody who's less sick. But there's always at least a little bit of distance you can travel down that road towards something better, I think. Mm-hmm. And often a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. What is like functional nutrition? Is that we said, so like versus nutrition? What?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a million different nutrition theories out there and nutrition approaches, dietary theories. And, so a dietary theory, right, is something like paleo or keto or, the Atkins diet. So it's sort of like applying these principles to a dietary theory. But functional nutrition is really more of an approach to figuring out how to do the right thing for your body. And so it's fundamentally about trying to understand what are the root causes of the health complaints that someone's presenting with. And it's highly individualized. It's highly about really looking at, what's true for this person in front of me right now. What are their signs and symptoms telling me? What can I infer about their organ function by the things that I'm seeing? And, what can their blood labs tell me about their nutritional status? Are there nutrients that might be missing that we need to support to ensure that there's good function? And so we kind of, it's more of a method and a toolbox of sort of laying this foundation and a way to dig into all those details to kind of uncover what's the right course of action here to move this case forward and lay a really solid foundation of nutrients and not just nutrients, but also supportive behaviors like we were talking about, the sleep and stress reduction and exercise and whatnot. And just layer all that into place and also support the person in making those changes, because let's face it, you can have all the right information, but actually making changes is challenging and can be hard. And so, I mean, in a lot of ways, that's almost more of the issue than, all the nuts and bolts. And then you know, after we've got this foundation in place and we've plugged nutrient leaks and we've removed the things that are causing problems and we've added in supportive behaviors, sometimes that's all that's required for people to really make a lot of progress. And sometimes after all that, there's still things that are there. And then you can begin to dig even deeper and investigate, you know, the deeper level root causes. So things like hidden infections or, you know, just pathological dysfunction in the body, and start addressing those. So an example would be thyroid imbalance. So, you know, actually doing testing to look at how's the thyroid function. Is it working how it's supposed to? And then, you know, if not, then what else can we do to help that condition unravel itself? And or do we need to be in touch with a medical doctor who can prescribe medication that might support that situation, or, you know, manage that? So, you know, we just, it's really in a lot of ways like practicing science. It's sort of like, I've had some other interviews with people where we end up talking a lot about, well, this is kind of like the scientific method, you know, like you gather all this data and information, you have a hypothesis, and then you test a solution and see how things respond. And if it doesn't respond how you thought, now you've got more information to work with and you try something new. If it does work how you thought it would respond, then great, you're on the path, and you keep refining that and improving on it, and, you know, moving yourself slowly towards your goal.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like it could even be an exciting journey and kind of keep a person engaged and keep a person listening to their own body so they can bring that information back to you in the next session.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think that it's really well suited for people who are really curious about themselves and, you know, what is going on in there. I'm so confused about this and that, and I want to figure out why. Yeah. So if you're in that boat, then yeah, it's super exciting. But even if you're not, I think that developing that relationship with our body is a really powerful way to be. Just to, you know, okay, this thing is happening. You know, I'm experiencing this symptom. You know, what's that telling me? I think it's really powerful to pay attention in that way. And it's largely ignored in the sort of conventional system. It's like, oh, well, okay, you've got that symptom here. Let's give you a pill for that. Let's not get curious about why that's happening and help you figure out how to stop it that way.
Right, the Band-Aid method.
Yeah, the Band-Aid method. So this morning, I just wrote it to somebody. I said, it's kind of like, you know, trying to bail out the Titanic with, you know, the sinking Titanic with a little hand bucket, you know, like it's not going to work.
Yeah. So with the sinking Titanic, what are some of your favorite methods that you've come back to again and again, or offered to people and seen them work?
Yeah. I think the top two things that, you know, really get the ball rolling is one, figuring out which foods are problematic for you. And it's pretty individualized, but the top three problematic foods are, I mentioned them earlier, they're gluten and dairy and sugar. And, you know, this can be hard for people because it's kind of like, well, that's everything I eat, or that's everything that's available to me to eat. But ultimately, the foundation of health really begins at the end of your fork. And if those foods are causing trouble for you and you're eating them every single day, multiple times a day, like no amount of pills or supplements or therapy or whatever is going to help you get where you want to go. And so figuring out that piece is really key, like really deeply understanding, you know, what's working for my body and what's not. And then I think the other huge piece is the stress piece. I think we're all so stressed out. And it's like, and I think stress is often it's just happening. Like there's no way we're going to be able to get around it. But if we can figure out ways to manage it, you know, successfully, and just let some of that go and calm down that stress response in spite of it, we're going to be in much better condition and be much closer to our goal.
I agree with that. What are some of your personal stress management techniques that you're using in your life?
Yeah. One of my very favorites is using self-hypnosis apps. I use them at night when I go to bed, and this is like a double benefit for helping sleep. But I find that, just giving myself that time to kind of follow these instructions about, okay, like take a nice deep breath, really imagine like bring your awareness to the top of your head and imagine that it's relaxing, relax your jaw, and just like walking through those techniques and taking, anywhere from 5 to 25 minutes to just focus on breathing and being present in my body, really will transform my day. I listen to those at night often, but sometimes I will listen earlier in the day. And then there's another app that I really love that's called Stop, Think, Breathe. And it's little short mindfulness meditations. They're anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes or 10 minutes long. So really doable, really short things. And then I also just, I take a daily morning walk, and, and I try to do at least one thing every single day that I really feel passionate about and I love, no matter what.
What was that today?
I haven't gotten there yet, but often it's music. I play piano and I play guitar and sing. I really like to knit. I really love watching birds. I mean, I just have all these hobbies and things that I love doing, or, hanging out with my kids, or, so, it really can be anything that inspires you.
Yeah, something that just makes regular daily life beautiful and saturated with enjoyment. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what about your kids during this journey? Do they remember when you were like less capable of actions, if that was ever your case?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. My son probably doesn't, because he was 2 when everything came down like that. But my daughter probably does. And she's always been pretty self-sufficient, even when she was pretty little. And I think that, I think she had to kind of get used to not asking too much of me, which kind of breaks my heart a little bit. But it's really fun to watch how, this work has become such an integral part of my life and who I am and how I am in our family and our community. And so they, I've got them taking supportive nutrients, and, they take their vitamins every morning, and they're starting to feed back to me things that I've been saying over and over and over again about nutrition. And it's really neat to see that. And
like what? What are they saying?
Like, my son often is drawn to eat, like a lot of little kids. He's 6. He's often drawn to eat just kind of junky carbohydrates, crackers, pretzels, rice, potatoes, pizza. Like he just wants like easy. And he's also always asking about, oh, can I have this piece of chocolate or this candy? And I'm always like, well, yeah, maybe you can have some of that, but I'd like you to have some protein with it too. We want to help manage your protein intake and make sure you've got that on board. And so he starts asking me now, like, well, what do tomatoes have protein? And does this have protein? And well, this has protein. And I'm like, well, that has a little protein, but not maybe enough. And just last night he was saying, well, if I eat this, it's got a little protein. I'm like, yeah, but you'd have to eat 5 adult servings of that to get what you need. And he's like, oh, okay. So we just get to have these really fun exchanges and conversations about protein and nutrition in general. And I just love that they're going to grow up with that knowledge. They're never going to be lost in the world without this information about how to take care of their bodies. And so, you know, even were I never to, you know, do anything with nutrition, even that alone is a huge, awesome thing.
Yeah. So what about in your community? You said that, like the way that you are in your community, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, well, like I said, I live in this really isolated rural place, but, you know, we do have a really vibrant human community here. And, you know, just as I go, I continue to offer classes and events and opportunities to share about this knowledge and support the community's health. And I do work some one-on-one with people here. And so, for example, I don't know if you've run across this 9-episode docu-series that's coming up. It's starting next week, called the Human Longevity Project. But so I invited my community to come over and, you know, view the first episode together. And, you know, so some people will come over, we'll watch it, we can have a conversation about it. And, you know, the whole focus of the series is how to live a really long, healthy life. And I mean, what a great conversation to have with your community. You know, what are the things that we can put into place and make use of here in our community and encourage in our community. So,
yeah, that sounds like a fantastic, fun night. If, you know, so that kind of brings me to the education that we have in our communities across the country. If there was a couple things you could just give to the American public, what would they be?
If I could give them important information about something?
Like information or inspiration or perspectives, just if, you know, if you could kind of like hand something to people that everybody right now would kind of take in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds so nuts and bolts, but I think, you know, in terms of where our country's at, in terms of health, like the diet stuff is kind of confusing and can be complicated. And I think, you know, a lot of people are really confused about it, but it really comes down to making sure we get some protein and fat and fiber in every single meal. It's like, and notice that there's no carbohydrate in there, you know, like, so the bread and the pasta and the treats and the pastries and, you know, the tortillas and, you know, I mean, they're fine foods to eat, but we really want to make sure that we're balancing out our blood sugar. Like the baseline piece of all this health stuff comes down to, like, are we managing our blood sugar well? And so I think just that little piece, you know, so protein, animal or vegetable protein, whatever it is for you. You know, fat, which is like all the, you know, there's animal sources, there's vegetable sources, but, you know, healthy fats, so coconut oil and butter and, you know, olive oil and all those good veggie oils, and then fiber, so, you know, nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, and that really looks like a pretty complete, awesome diet template for people. Mm-hmm. The specifics matter, and you have to sort out what those are, but really the confusion can just all be cleared up with just make sure you're getting protein, fat, and fiber in every meal and snack. Yeah. Yeah,
I love that, that, you know, just to address the chronic illness, because it's like, do you find that it's something that just kind of sets on one day, or is it something that builds in the system and then gets noticed at a certain point?
It's absolutely the latter. You know, you don't just suddenly wake up one day and have diabetes. It's more like it's been kind of developing, and you can actually track the signs over time, which is why I'm a huge advocate for helping people just track their health metrics and understanding what those numbers mean on your lab tests and things. It's absolutely a slow, long process. And so, yeah, I mean, we need to be focusing on the long game here. Like, as a society, we need to be looking at the long game and like broad public policy investments that support people in being able to make the right choices over the course of their life. You know, can they have access when they are out and about to healthy kinds of foods, healthy servings of foods? I mean, it's like, it's really hard to be out in this world and try and eat well. You know, if you're trying to avoid the big 3 allergens plus the next top 3 big allergens, like there's not really much for you to eat.
What are the next top 3 allergens?
We have gluten, dairy, sugar, and then we've got soy, eggs, and sometimes my brain forgets the 6th.
Corn or canola?
Corn. Thank you. Yes, corn. So, you know, if you're not eating those 6 foods, and I can't eat any of those 6 foods, you know, and I'm trying to do the right thing. And I mean, it's different. It's not usually to this level for a lot of people. A lot of people can't, you know, maybe can eat those, like they don't have drastically noticeable symptoms when they eat those things, but they shouldn't be eating them. And yeah, and they, it's like you go to any restaurant to try and find something that meets those criteria. It's pretty hard. Or if you're in an airport and you try and meet that criteria, or certainly if you're in a hospital and you try and meet those criteria, it's really hard.
So what are you personally doing?
With
like when you travel or when you go to an airport, or just how are you?
Yeah. I often bring my own food. I bring things that I can eat so that when I'm in between, I have something to eat. I often travel with like little like jerky bars, and I have like a protein powder that works for me that I can mix with, this sounds really funny, but a baby food package. So I can get some fruit and vegetables and this protein, you know, in a shaker cup. So I can, you know, when we traveled last summer, I just had a bunch of those with me so that on those travel days when there's just nothing available to eat, you know, I can make sure that I'm not going hungry. And yeah. And then sometimes, you know, you can find, okay, here's some fresh fruit, or, you know, I can get a salad with just a little chicken on it or something, but it's challenging.
I think what blows my mind about this whole situation, and specifically in the United States, is that, you know, what you're talking about right now, there's food available, right? But it's just so laden with allergens and synthetic ingredients that as one starts to wake up, or perhaps experiences a chronic illness for oneself and doesn't want to continue living with pain and with discomfort, you start to realize that actually there's not so much food available, even though there's just, I mean, you know, some countries, people are just trying to get food on their plate, and that is real food. And we're in the States are in a situation where we're trying to avoid a bunch of food and might even, or choose to go hungry in a place where we can't find real edible nutrients. That just, it blows my mind.
It is really interesting. I know I talk a lot about, you know, finding foods that are nutrient dense, and, you know, yeah, even though we have so much abundance of, you know, something edible available, so you're right, a lot of them are not very nutrient dense or healthy foods. And in a lot of ways, certain areas in our whole country are giant food deserts, you know.
Which is incredible, because that could be the center of a city, right? There could be a food desert in a neighborhood.
Yes. Yeah, it's really common in low-income neighborhoods that there may be plenty of liquor stores full of Twinkies and candy bars and Wonder Bread and, you know, canned cheese and, like, you know, those kinds of convenience foods, but there may not be a grocery store within 20 miles or 10 miles. And, you know, there's projects in places like Oakland where people are trying to correct that. It's sort of interesting.
Yeah, I've seen a couple documentaries about people starting a garden out of necessity in food deserts, and, you know, teaching teenagers about coming and working in this garden and bringing it back. And it's almost like this crisis point where just letting the government and the corporations kind of build up around us and do what they do, we've kind of hit this crisis point where all of a sudden we have to take care of ourselves. And we have to kind of, like, we've come full circle, and now it's back to, like, I need that garden. I need to preserve my vegetables, which, you know, to someone like my grandmother who had to do that, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, that's strange and funny, and I don't want anything to do with that again. And our generations are kind of choosing that, which is, that's a really interesting full circle experience to me as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, are you going to just choose to be self-empowered to create the life you would like to see how you want it? Or are you going to just sort of let all these other corporations and businesses decide for you? I mean, which one is full power and which one is just being, okay, I'm just going to take this because that's what's given? I personally choose, to make it work for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody has a chronic illness and wants to work with you, what do you offer? Can they reach out to you and just say like, hey, I've got this going on, and start coaching with you online and receive that kind of support?
Yeah. So the first step is we do a really thorough case review, and I kind of offer that as like its own unique freestanding package. It's a 2-visit package, and so we really just dig through a person's history and their current situation and really try and understand the full picture as best we can of what's going on. And then out of that, we create a plan to move forward, and then people can choose to move forward with coaching, or they can take that information and, that's, it's like really valuable information in and of itself. And I create what's called a functional nutrition timeline for them, where I map out chronologically the different things that may have impacted their current situation throughout their life, including even what we call the antecedents, so things that came before. So, what happened to their parents or grandparents, or, what were the family history things that come up in their health history. And then I also create what's called a functional nutrition matrix, which kind of maps out in a visual way all the sort of current symptoms and current factors. So, even if you don't move ahead with coaching from that point, you have these really great resources that you can hang on to and hand over to your doctor or other health provider to help them understand the full case picture. Because it's like, I really just want to be a huge advocate for, working on our health issues holistically and really like viewing the whole picture. There's, anyone can kind of look at the details and be like, oh, you have this here, take this pill, but to really manage these different parts and, help people really truly make a difference for how they're feeling and their long-term prospects for themselves. Like, we really need to look at the whole picture. People aren't just one isolated organ or system, like we're everything collectively. So anyways, that little package is a little 2-visit package, and people leave with those resources and an action plan. And then if they choose, they can move ahead to ongoing coaching. And we meet fairly regularly and start working on making some of these shifts and changes that make the difference for people.
Well, we're going to link to your services here in the interview. And, I'm just so grateful that people like yourself who have had this experience of a chronic illness and have had that kind of curiosity and drive to go and find the information, apply it to your own life, see the difference. You're now coming back and you're staying with that area of life and offering your services there, offering your inspiration. I mean, just to create what you're creating, where you described the matrix, and to listen to someone's story at that level, that's a lot of dedication and a lot of effort and inspiration that you're giving in that way. So just thank you for doing that. That's so incredible.
Yeah, you're welcome. I truly love it. I really love doing it. I love digging into those details with people. I just find it so profoundly interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't help it.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. So you're totally doing what you need to do. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for being a part of this interview and for sharing your story. And I'm just excited I'm excited for those people who really need you to find you and to work with you and to bring ease into their life, because we all deserve that and it's possible.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me and just sharing all I'm sure I haven't had a chance to, have you published any of the interviews yet? Not quite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, some of them are live.
Pardon?
Some of them are live already.
Mm-hmm. So they're all on the Facebook page, and from there, all the interviews are accessible, and you can find them. So that'll be linked here as well.
Yeah, I'm just excited to get inspired. I mean, it's really fun to pass the inspiration around.
Every single person in these interviews is just, every time I speak to them, I'm like, wow, this is incredible. This is really incredible content, an incredible person with a magnificent story. I'm just so inspired by everybody that I've spoken with.
Yeah. What a fun project. And so much just spread the love, good stuff.
Yeah.